Dr. Fauci, first off, thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
My pleasure. Good to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Fauci, first off, we're at the 1 year mark of all of this, and I'm just curious kind of how you're doing, how you assess the past year, because it's certainly been crazy for everyone.
Well, it certainly has been an unusual year to say the least. This is a very important week now because it was during this week that the WHO declared this an emergency, a public health emergency of global health concern. And in fact, it was the day tomorrow, a year ago tomorrow, was when I was in the Oval Office with President Trump and others of my colleagues on the White House Coronavirus Task Force, and we made the recommendation to shut down travel of non-citizens from Europe to the United States because it was very clear that the infections that were seeding New York City and the Northeastern corridor were not coming directly from China. They were actually coming from the European Union. And the president, to his credit, agreed that that's something that we should do. And that really started the shutdown, even in our own country. And it began the long journey that we've been on right now of, getting a lot of infections and then coming down and then surging up. We've had three major surges since then. The week of March 2020 was really at the time of the first major surge at the end of the winter, the beginning of the spring.
Not only is this an important week, but in Texas especially, it's an important day. As you are probably aware, today is the day that Texas reopens to 100%, if a business wants to, and the mask mandate goes away. What do you make of that decision?
I'm a bit concerned about it. I understand the need and the desire to get back to normal as quickly as you possibly can, and we will ultimately get there. My concern and that of my public health colleagues is that it isn't like turning a switch on and off. If you just completely put aside all public health measures, there is a risk that you will then trigger another surge. And that's not what we need right now. We're having the numbers come down sharply, and then they came to a little plateau, and now they're continuing to go down. The one thing you don't want to do is reverse that and have it go up. So I'm a bit concerned, particularly about the masking. I could understand of gradually tiptoeing into some of the other activities that you want to do, which are important and should be done. But I think we should continue with the masking for at least another period of time.
I am curious, you're on a lot of calls with a lot of different officials. Did anybody from Texas actually reach out and talk to you about this decision in advance? And if so, what'd you tell them?
No, they did not. I had not heard from Texas officials about this before it happened.
Yeah, the question that we hear from people, or at least the response is, okay, if not now, then when? That the goalposts keep moving. So if you can be specific, is there a level, whether it's cases or deaths or vaccination percentage, where we can say, okay, you can go back to that sporting event, you can go eat inside a restaurant with the mask off again?
Yeah, what you actually want is you want to see a very low test positivity, less than 5% if you can get there, whether or not every area in Texas will be there or just certain sections of Texas, but you really want to get down that low. But probably as important or more important than that is the percentage of people who are vaccinated. Right now, 9 to 10% of the entire country is fully vaccinated, and a certain percentage more have received at least one dose. As the weeks and months go by, as we get more and more vaccine doses, and as we continue to go over 2 million vaccinations per day, literally within days to weeks as they go and you progress, we get better and better and better to the point where we hope by the time we get a substantial proportion of the population vaccinated, it'll be much less risky to pull back on public health measures.
There's certainly a race to get vaccinated, but when you look back, you've been able to see different countries, different states, how people have handled this pandemic. How do you grade or assess the decisions that Texas has made throughout the past year and kind of trying to keep everything low?
Well, I don't want to get into giving them a grade because I think that would be a bit unfair because I am not there every day on the ground seeing what's going on. I did say that I was a little bit concerned about opening up too quickly. When the second surge we had, if you recall, which was in the summer of 2020, when the southern states, including Texas, when we were trying to open up the economy, opening up the country by doing the gateway, the phase one, the phase two, and the phase three. There was some states, including Texas, that went a bit quickly on that. When we had a surge that was really quite an important surge in the summer. But again, Texas is a really big state. You have a lot of people, so you don't want to just be judging everybody the same way. I mean, there's some areas that did really quite well.
For you personally, when you look back, is there any big regret to you? Anything that in hindsight you wish you had done differently?
You get asked that question all the time, but since this was such a moving target, we did not know everything we needed to know in the very beginning. And we kept getting an unrolling and an evolution of knowledge that influenced greatly what statements we made and what recommendations we made. And retrospectively, when you look back, based on the information we had at the time, that was the right decision. That was the right statement. But based on what we know now, it wasn't. Because, for example, we did not know very early on the efficiency with which this virus spreads from person to person. We were under the impression from the Chinese, and then it became amply clear to us that this is highly efficient in going from person to person. We thought it was jumping from an animal to a human, but didn't spread very well. Then we found out it spread very well. And then the real transforming bit of information that we found out was that it also is spread very, very much so from a person who has no symptoms at all. So we found out that anywhere from 1/3 to 40% of people who are infected have no symptoms, and between 50 to 60% of all the infections get transmitted from someone who has no symptoms to another person, which makes it a major impact on things like mask wearing, on contact tracing. If we had known all of that last January, we'd have done things a bit differently.
Another thing that we've learned at least a lot about recently is variants. Earlier this week, Houston said they found the variant first discovered in the United Kingdom in their wastewater. What do we know not just about how contagious these different variants are, but if they cause more serious illness? Is there one that stands out to you and we should be worried or concerned about?
Well, the UK variant, the 117, spreads more rapidly and does have a higher degree of virulence. That's the sobering news. The good news is that the vaccines that we have right now that we're administering do very well against the UK variant. The one that is of more concern is the South African variant, the 351. That is one that actually not only spreads rapidly, but it eludes some of the protection of the monoclonal antibodies and of the vaccine. Doesn't completely eliminate it for the vaccine. You still get a degree of protection, but it diminishes it somewhat. But we have our own homegrown variants that we need to be concerned about. For example, the 526 variant in New York and the 427, 429 variant in California. So we've got to keep our eye out on these and take them all seriously.
Vaccines, you mentioned, are a good way to prevent against that. But one thing that's been a concern, and I've watched here for us, Texas, as of Monday, had nearly 200,000 people who had gotten a first shot but were overdue for the second shot. Another 500,000 are due, so they're in that window. Describe to us what that means, why is that concerning, and what that could mean for even more variants.
Yeah, if you have a diminution of the level of antibodies and you get infected, it could really enhance the evolution of variants. And that's the reason why we keep saying that it is optimal for those who get the Pfizer to get it 21 days later, and those who get the Moderna to get it 28 days later. I mean, obviously, if they are stressed, you can keep it, maybe a week or two more. The CDC has said, if you have no other choice, if there's really a difficulty in getting it, a week or two additionally is not going to make a big difference, but you don't want to go much further than that.
When you look at the EUAs, some of these vaccines, as you know, we got 3 vaccines at this point. Merck is helping out make Johnson & Johnson. What is stopping other companies from jumping in and helping to make more of these vaccines? In the media briefing this morning, it was kind of teased there might be another announcement. Are we moving up that end of May to maybe early May at this point for vaccines available for every adult?
No, I don't think that we're going to see anything more than what was announced about the end of May. The end of May to have enough vaccine to vaccinate virtually everybody in the country who's an adult is really quite good and quite fast. One of the issues of being able to get other companies involved in making the mRNA vaccine that Moderna and Pfizer make is that that's a pretty complicated process to do, much more complicated than just going in and making a different type of a product. So I don't think we're going to see much of that. What we did get, which was good, is that we negotiated with both Pfizer and Moderna to get an additional 100 million doses apiece from them a few weeks ago, which increased the totality from them of a total of 600 million doses, which is enough to vaccinate 300 million people with 2 doses.
Southwest Airlines and American Airlines are based here. The current guidance for fully vaccinated people is, you can meet with other people who are fully vaccinated but still don't travel. You're smiling, you get this question a lot, but at what point are we going to be able to change that guidance so people can travel? Is it a level of vaccination that we're looking for?
That's a decision the CDC makes, and they actually look at the data on a daily basis in real time, continually reevaluating the guidelines. I can tell you the guidelines that came out a couple of days ago that spoke about people who were fully vaccinated in the home, either with relatives or neighbors, in a modest number of people in the home setting. That is just the first installment in a series of recommendations that will come out, including what to do about travel. And the travel one, I'm sure, is going to be very soon. You'll be hearing more about what one can do when you're vaccinated and traveling.
I appreciate all of your time. Was there any other message that you want to share with people as it relates to vaccines or this pandemic and Texas reopening or anything?
Yeah, I think people need to hang in there a bit longer, because literally every day that you get 2 to 3 million people vaccinated, we get closer and closer to being able to have some form of normality. So there is light at the end of the tunnel, and we will get through this together. I think people need to appreciate that and not be discouraged.
Dr. Fauci, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.